Namaste, and welcome to our explorations in Savitri with our beloved Alakbai. And it's good to have you back.
Yes, same here.
We have ended part 2 of Savitri, and we are in book 4, the book of birth and quest. And the page number I have is 355.
I think we have crossed that or no?
I marked it.
That's true. 355. That's right. And we have to start from the second line, right?
From the second line, correct.
Yeah. So, you see, one of the greatest mysteries, at least for me, what fascinates me most, is about the divine taking a human birth. And there are many reasons why this fascinates. The other day I had a young boy, not so young, but well, in 30s, who had a little fungal infection. And that fungal infection was enough to flare him up to that extent that, look, what is God doing out there? Neither the medicines have side effects and God also doesn't listen. So I said, I told him in Hindi, Sida Bhagwan mein pahunch gaye, matlab you reach straight away, there is nothing in between. But anyways, so he had a point, he said, he is sitting there, he is seeking fun, see what's happening in India, everything, all this. So I said, who told you that he is sitting up there only and, just having fun to start with? So he said, no, that's what it is. I said, no, that's not how it is, at least.
Had you looked for him here?
Yeah, I said, he is not only up above, he is also in this creation to start with and bears the brunt of all the evil and suffering and pain. Not only he is inside, but he actually takes a human form and human shape and takes upon the very body and mind the blows that humanity undergoes. So that is the mystery of the avatar. So, and he has to have a state of consciousness which is beyond, transcendent. Otherwise he can't help. So I gave this example that supposing you want to help somebody who is in the mud. And if you also descend into the mud and completely are identified with it, sucked into it, soaked into it, then probably the two of you will need a third person to help you. So there is a poise of consciousness which must be outside that which you want to help. That famous Archimedes lever. That
Screw.
Give me a space outside the earth and all that I need is a lever to move it. So it's very true. And that poise is part of the plan. But that's not the only thing, because it has come out of a certain thought where God is up in heaven, where he is just enjoying. That makes it even worse. A God who enjoys all this, looking at all this, is obviously just a monster God. But he has entered into creation. So he has entered and he remains immune, that is true. But he is the one who absorbs all the pain and evil and suffering. But from time to time, he also takes as an avatar. Now here comes a very tricky question, which there is no clear answer. In fact, there is no answer in the scriptures, in any of the readings. But people ask this question and they feel that, so Sri Aurobindo was Sri Krishna in his previous life and Lord Rama in the previous life, because there is a lineage of avatars. But that's not how it works. So if you look at Sri Krishna, he says, I have had many lives. And I am conscious, but you are not conscious. Sri Aurobindo also speaks about it, that we were working in many lives as vibhutis, but in this life they have come as avatars. So what is it about? So how I look at it, as I said, there is no scriptural answer. So don't ask me for any reference. The reference is only how I have understood it or how it has been revealed to me. And of course based on these aspects, because avatarhood is something which the only one who has really developed to the fullest is Sri Aurobindo. Even the Gita just makes some references, the Bible makes some cryptic remarks, but it's not something which has been developed. And Sri Aurobindo goes at great length to talk about the possibility and purpose of avatarhood, the divine work, etc. And it's a very important integral aspect of the integral yoga and the supramentalization, which I think is hardly discussed. So what happens is, I understand that there is one line of plunge, which is the psychic beings, which are like centers of concentration within the one divine. And they are divine in essence, but as seeds, and they have to blossom. But also the divine himself also plunges into creation with his totality, but focusing on one aspect or the other. And therefore there are simultaneously, in as I understand it, say a line of divine descent which is going to grow into the full avatarhood of Shri Krishna, growing rather manifesting as the full avatarhood of Krishna. There is another line which is going to manifest in its fullness as the avatar of Sri Aurobindo. Now, when we look at Sri Aurobindo and the mother said very interestingly, the Vedic rishis were also involutionary beings, but they were from the higher consciousness, not from the supreme divine. And they were in search of immortality. That was their angle of vision. Buddha and Avatar, his angle of vision was the permanent, which is beyond this transient stress of suffering and pain. Christ, that love and compassion which can heal humanity. When we look at Shri Krishna, he brings freedom and delight. And when we look at Sri Aurobindo, he brings truth and perfection. So there is, and all these are aspects of the divine. So there is the full divine who enters into the plunge along with these psychic beings, and those psychic beings which are not psychic being but psychic essence, which are meant to manifest some aspect of that. He draws them, associates with them from life to life, and mother speaks of it that we all have been together. When she was asked about
yes, many
previous
times
lives,
before.
She said, we all have been together, only you don't remember it, just like Shri Krishna, but I remember it. And then she says something very interesting. We have shared the struggle and you will share the victory. So it's like from lives, there is a kind of link. Let's say it is decided before time. That also she says. That this was decided before time began. That means before the plunge into creation began. That this is going to happen. Let's say one day there will be a perfection. Truth. In the perfect sense, in the wholeness of truth is a whole, not a bits and parts. And there were many of us who plunged along with that. These psychics' essence is to grow into a psychic being, and whereas this aspect of the divine will go through its own line of experiences, except that it is conscious of the divine and it will manifest through many lives into the fullness of the full-fledged perfection of truth. So this is one I thought I'll share, because this nowhere there. So
we see so much of the avatar in Savitri.
Yes.
And his struggle.
Its whole story is about the avatar.
And his suffering.
Yeah, the whole story is about the avatar. The Divine Mother taking a human form is the avatar. Ashyapati, as the representative of the divine upon earth, is the avatar.
Exactly.
And so I think it's a very important thing, even if we take it from the spiritual scientific point of view, all evolution is preceded by an evolution from the higher plane.
Always.
So once it touches, there is a call and a cry. So it's typically like Shri Krishna takes a descent and he calls all those who are seeking for freedom and delight. Same with Christ comes and he calls all those who are seeking for compassion and love and charity and amongst human beings, and he calls them together. So Sri Aurobindo comes and calls all those who are seekers after truth and perfection. This terrestrial life must grow perfect.
And he writes, all who have answered the call.
Yes. So I suppose that's how. And
I would give a personal remembrance because it happened in front of Mother. When Inly came, I brought her in 1968 to meet Mother for the first time. And Mother looks at her, and I'll never forget this moment. She says, "This is not the first time we have met.
Exactly.
You have been with me many times before. Many, many times."
That's it. So this is how, because it's not Shri Krishna comes as Sri Aurobindo and he was as Sri Rama. That's a different line of descent. And it is the same full divine. But this was the mission of the aspect of the divine that it plans to bring out this illumined sattvic mind. So it arrives at the fullness of the avatar in the persona or personality of Lord Rama. So,
and do you feel that Sri Aurobindo and Mother have come because there was a possibility in the earth for the transformation?
Yes, and not only possibility, I mean, Sri Aurobindo gives at one place very cryptic letter that Shri Krishna came early But actually it is his work that is being done, because delight and freedom cannot establish on the basis of falsehood and ignorance. Invariably it will be haunted by pain, suffering and ignorance. So first truth must establish itself. And here truth is not my truth and your truth and legal truth and moral truth and these truths, but truth as a whole. Perfection implies wholeness. It's not a set of virtues, but wholeness, the totality. And that's why this is logically also the last avatar, because after perfection there is only the
Satchidananda.
and it's a growth from one degree of perfection to another. So it had come as a revelation, and a lot of people ask this question. So I thought I'll share this because we are at a right place in Savitri. But as I said, please don't ask me for any references. There are no scriptural references to this as far as I know. It's not there in the Gita. Sri Aurobindo has not said directly anything that, how it happens. But when we look at it's very obvious.
Start.
So we continue. Yes.
Some missioned power in the half-awakened frame nursed a transcendent birth's dumb, glorious seed, for which this vivid tenement was made. But soon the link of soul with form grew sure. Flooded was the dim cave with slow, conscient light. The seed grew into a delicate, marvellous bud. The bud disclosed a great and heavenly bloom. At once she seemed to found a mightier race. Arrived upon the strange and dubious globe, the child, remembering inly a far home, lived guarded in her spirit's luminous cell, alone mid men in her diviner kind.
So we see here again some mission power in the half-wakened frame. So it is not a completely unconscious birth. Even the frame is somewhere partly conscious of what is going to come. Nursed a transcendent birth's dumb glorious seed. So she is bringing something which is not yet in the cosmos. That's what avatar is. That's the difference between the vibhutis who continue what has been brought into the cosmic manifestation, and the avatar who brings something new, utterly new,
Yes.
from the transcendent. And once he casts that seed into the cosmic consciousness through the cosmic spirit, then it becomes, many people will arise, vibhutis and others who will follow on that trail, for which this vivid tenement was made. So again, the third thing is, it's a very consciously prepared body. It is not a body which, prepared by the forces of unconsciousness. And the mother speaks about it. Sri Aurobindo has also said the mother's body itself has been formed in a different way. It is not formed through the normal processes. Formed in the normal process there. There is a physical act and there is the seed,
That was human birth.
human birth.
Human birth.
So perhaps this idea of a virgin birth is very symbolic. That yet the body is formed by elements, because after all, behind the formation of body there are forces. If we take the Indian occult view, then there are forces which are forming the form, the figure, everything must be representative of what is going inside. But it's an unconscious process. But here is a being who is himself participating in the formation, and the forces of universal nature are coming together to form a frame. This is a very rare phenomena. The mother speaks of it. Even a well-developed psychic being can come close to an extent influencing the formation of the physical body. Otherwise, normally it takes the body which has been formed, though watches over it, because the body formation is still largely under the laws of heredity, atavism and material laws. So you can't have mastery over it, but it watches over. To an extent influences. But here already there is a half-wakened frame, for which this vivid tenement was made. But soon the link of soul with form grew sure. So this is what happens normally in an link of soul with form is like, I give this example. People often ask about abortion and all this. So it's the soul doesn't really enter the body in so early. In many cases it may never enter. it may never really create a link. It is right up there, and the body and nature is still too crude.
In some cases, it could take years.
Years, and even sometimes in a whole lifetime, it just remains up above. It's too dark and muddy to enter. So, but it's there. There is something called as a psychic essence, a very early primitive births. But over a period of time in many people, well, at some point the contact will be made. So usually the mother has said the contact takes place, it takes almost 14 years. So 14 years, and usually when it takes place, that time the person goes through some kind of an experience or the other. Either there is an awakening, thoughts coming which are very different, then it be veiled and eclipsed. You'll go through that whole rigmarole of, all kinds of things, selfies and selfishness. But before that, or it can be, rarely it can be very early. So that time the person, there will be some utterance, certain things which will give an indication that this being is not just a ordinary being. Ordinary in that sense, not in a superiority sense, but in the sense that already there is a contact from a very early age. And very rarely the contact will be, say, as early as 1 or 2. And the reason is because the body will not be able to support this kind of contact. Can't bear it. That little soul, which is just a little flame, no bigger than the thumb of man. It's tremendous, powerful thing. It's like it can flood the whole being. And if the mind is not formed, it can totally, you have to go through a process where parents are disciplining you. Just take an example. I often say, imagine if Duman Bhai and all, Duman Bhai said, by the way, I'll come back soon for mother's work. Now imagine Duman Bhai, Pranab Da taking a human body. What is going to happen to the parent that the parents only will understand? They're not going to listen. They'll be, probably even what would be called today as disruptive child.
Unless they are prepared.
Even then, because they are coming with a very different, the parents, yes, if they are exceptional beings.
Yes.
Exceptional beings. Because they are, what is coming is far ahead.
Yes.
That's one of the mistakes we say, oh, you are a bacha. We don't know, a bacha may be much more than a bacha. The parent may be the bacha. So that's why perhaps child is the father of man. Only the reverse should also, father is also the child of the child. So anyway, so this is the contact which takes place. It takes time. In mother's instance, he says almost from the very childhood she was conscious of her mission. And she says at 2 years of age, she used to be aware of this light which is above, and she used to pull it. She knew that I have to live for that. And while people would take interest in ordinary games, she would not take interest in that. She would be interested in this, sitting in an armchair. And many of her, even her parents and others, they didn't understand what is she doing. But she used to see this light and pull it down. So she says it started with consciousness. Now at 2 years of age, it's...
Who is conscious?
Yeah, I mean, it's
but she speaks when she's 5. And this has always been one of the most beautiful experiences.
When she's sitting in the armchair.
Sitting in the chair, and she's seeing herself in the sky with a huge robe, and it's covering all of humanity.
There is a picture of the mother sitting on the chair, another when she is standing by the side of the chair. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see divinity in a child, there it is. So this is a very conscious process which is being revealed to us. Flooded was the dim cave with slow, conscient light. It is a slow process. Otherwise, it can be very unnerving to nature. Nature has to slowly adapt to this new light which she is bringing. Yes. So it comes from there, the heart mystic cave, where the psychic being resides. It's slowly flooded with the light. See how Sri Aurobindo is describing. Normally one would describe the stages of growth in the womb. But before that, something else is happening which she is describing. The seed grew into a delicate, marvellous bud. The bud disclosed a great and heavenly bloom. This only a master poet like Sri Aurobindo can describe. Growth from a seed to a flower of this.
And look how he uses the word tenement.
Tenement,
for her body.
Yeah.
Cave for her body.
It's so covering. Poetic. It's At once she seemed to found a mightier race. So, anybody who could be conscious could see that this is no ordinary child. And many of her stories, I think several times I have shared also, holding the hand of a monitress and telling her, you dare do this, and she changes and gives away the key, and she's frightened totally. And another with her father, you dare do it again and I'll walk away from here. And the father never ever lifts a hand against her brother, not against her, but her brother. So and he was a strong man. I mean, he was literally like Bhima, as we have heard. I mean, in a Kali Yuga, what you can imagine, who could bend a horse with a knock by his elbow, and yet she held the hand. What must be that force that almost paralyzed him, and he said, no, I'll never do it again. I mean, so she was born with this kind of a new, mightier race, another kind of power which normally is not visible. Arrived upon the strange and dubious globe. This is one. For her it is strange. For us it may have been, or for most people it is a familiar place, home. But strange and dubious.
Dubious.
Yeah. The child, remembering inly a far home, lived guarded in her spirit's luminous cell, alone mid men in her diviner kind. So one thing the mother has said about even developed psychic beings, that one of the things that many people who take to spiritual life and hear the call, they feel strange about their circumstances where they are living in, and they are not fully adapted to this. And this adaptation to the old way of life, they have very interesting story once. She speaks about, the mother says, I don't like the atmosphere of the hospitals, for all formations. Why do people want to go there and get admitted? Then the disciple speaks about another lady disciple who was very keen, and she goes to Vellore and she's admitted. So he says, well, she's very comfortable there. So mother says, yes, there are some people who are so well adapted to it that they are comfortable in a hospital setting. But I can imagine, beings of a new creation, they would find all this. They would be finding medical practice very barbaric. Cutting, opening, this, that. And there are people who enjoy it. I know people who want to get all kinds of procedures done. You tell them it's not necessary. No, I want to. They undergo procedures 5 times, 6 times, still they are not satisfied. So this feeling of strangeness among humanity, its ways, its...
I think many of us may have had feeling of strangeness about our parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Parents and everybody around. I mean, I remember once telling one lady, as a 5-year-old, that why are you all the time coming and gossiping in the house? And my mom, she didn't know, because he heard something and said, what did you say? Mom is saying, "Tu ja khelne, you go for play." What are you? No, he's a child, you don't know what he has said. But I was very adamant, because he used to come and complain about her daughter-in-law. So as a child, I didn't understand much, but I could feel very horrible, that whole thing. I said, why are you always coming and complaining? Like that. Once it was far worse, when I can share it now. With my dad, I was traveling, must have been 7. I was born with this idea that Devasur Sangram, I have to fight for the gods. So whatever it be, and I feel a bit, sad also about what I said, but that was my truth, and now I understand it differently. I was looking in the train outside the window. So my father was with some of his, Muslim friends, nice friends. And that one of his friends asked me, Beta, you are thinking so much, you seem to be like philosophically thinking something. I said, no, I am praying. He said, what are you praying for? I said, Shakti, I want Shakti. So he said, why do you want Shakti? I said, I want to destroy the Muslims. I said in Hindi, Musalmano ka nash karunga. And, he was, and fortunately my sister was also there holding my hand tight. Chup rahe to dekho, see that side. I said, nahi. Nothing, all that I knew was some riots taking place. And so, maybe some, but this was so strong that time. Now, I feel it's not a good thing, please. But that was there as a deep imprint coming from somewhere, and it was strange.
Yes.
But that's how, you experience life at a certain age which you didn't understand, and slowly you understand the social life and how you are supposed to be politically correct and how you are supposed to behave, and etc., etc. So these children are not going to know how to behave to start with, because they have not yet discovered the true law of their being, and the old law doesn't work. This is the challenge with every parent having a new age child. They don't, if you tell them I'm your dad saying you listen, they don't listen. After a certain age, please be sure they are going to tell you, I am not asking permission, I am informing you. So be prepared, they are not going to ask permission. Huh? So children, don't listen all this. Huh? Anyways, they are going to end up do this.
She liked that.
Yeah.
Very good.
Even in her childish movements could be felt the nearness of a light still kept from earth, feelings that only eternity could share, thoughts natural and native to the gods. And this feeling reminds me of one of the stories of Mother, where she was sitting and her physical mother came, and there was something she asked and Mother replied and said, no, you are telling a lie. Mother didn't reply back. She kept looking, and then after a while she had tears in her eyes. So she asked, oh, so now you have started crying, not knowing, ki it's for a very different reason. Why are you crying now? She was a very iron lady. So Mother said, I am crying looking at the misery of this world. It was not because she knew she has not told a lie, but she's saying, I am crying because seeing the misery of this world. Now, this is only an avatar can feel like this, feelings of this kind, misery of this world.
Yes.
And then she says that my physical mother didn't understand. What is it about? What is the misery about it? But she looked at this world. Thoughts natural and native to the gods, as needing nothing but its own rapt flight. Her nature dwelt in a strong, separate air, like a strange bird with large, rich-colored breast that sojourns on a secret fruited bough, lost in the emerald glory of the woods, or flies above divine, unreachable tops. So they have a very rich inner life. Beings who are extremely developed, they have a very rich, developed psychic being, rich inner life, because that's the only way you can compensate for this drab earthly realities. So rainbow colored and this what we call as daydreaming, but fantasies, but these are imaginations cast by some light of truth. They are not just imaginations the way we understand. They are not fantasies of the desires, but imaginations cast by some light of truth, and in the mind they take the form of images.
Yes.
So this is how she is experiencing a rich colored breast of a bird, strange bird, a bird which is not found here. Harmoniously, she impressed the earth with heaven.
Yes.
Now, this word harmoniously changes. It is not come like, like earth feels, oh my God, what is this? But she blends so beautifully that the earth accepts but doesn't know, feels that there is something different, but doesn't quite know that what is so different. So, harmoniously.
And we have to take the word impressed in a different way. And impressed could be impressed like this, not just an impression, but impress the earth.
Yes, that there is something beyond, and yet she is accepting it and harmonizing with it. So, I think when Mother spoke about Savitri, one of the things she said is that experiences of the Divine Mother in her effort to adapt to the falsehoods of earth nature. She speaks about four things. One of them is this. So, harmoniously, she impressed the earth with heaven, aligned to a swift rhythm of sheer delight, and singing to themselves, her days went by. Each minute was a throb of beauty's heart. The hours were tuned to a sweet-toned content, which asked for nothing, but took all life gave. So there was no, desired self like that. But whatever came, beautifully she accepted. There is she speaks about her childhood. I'll read this line, then speak of this story. Sovereignly as her nature's inborn right. She says that she would never normally feel the urge to ask this or that, but once she had, she needed, because the petticoats were torn and she wanted an odd petticoat, and yet she would, as a child, that I should not ask for it. She says then so many came, and they came from all sides till she had to say stop. So this is the strange law. The law of desire is that we strain and stress after something, and the more we strain, the more it seems to go further and further. And this is the other law which Sri Aurobindo speaks in his poem called Kama. That when you turn away from Kama, then Kama chases you, please take it, please take it.
Yes.
But of course, if you turn away with this idea in mind, okay, if I do this, I'll get it, it doesn't work. If there is a genuine overcoming of desire, it will come in multiple ways. She describes this experience. She says, whenever I ask for something, it would come like this. And she says, later on, she says, this was the only time after that she didn't ask for herself. But whenever she would ask in the ashram, she had to ask for, when there were problems, money, she asked for Ganesha. And she says it started pouring in from all sides.
And then she needed more.
Then she needed more.
Can
he
you get
said,
it from the US?
He said, I have no influence beyond India.
Yes.
Because there is a bilateral agreement with the gods, no mutuality. So if the gods have shrunk from everywhere, they were there once active. But a strange kind of wave came through and it abolished the gods into a signless emptiness monism, which is a dangerous kind.
Yes.
In India, the gods coexisted with the one. So they were aspects of the one. So they were like steps in the large chain and the ladder, and that's how one could understand the complex world where one and the many coexisted. But there are philosophies and religions where there is one, but there is nothing else. So the steps are lost, and you will see that in these philosophies there is dualism. There is man and God.
Yes.
Man can worship God but not become one.
Very true.
Whereas in India you can not only worship is much later. You can become one through a process of ascension, because the gods are there as steps in the hierarchy. Of course, now we don't need, it's a different creation altogether.
Near was her spirit to its parent sun, the breath within to the eternal joy. The first fair life that breaks from nature's swoon mounts in a line of rapture to the skies. Absorbed in its own happy urge, it lives, sufficient to itself, yet turned to all.
See, these two lines again are so, they give a hint. Near was her spirit to its parent sun. She is coming from the home of truth.
Yes.
She is not coming from any of the lesser planes. And the second line is very interesting. Near the breath within to the eternal joy. So you see, it is very interesting that the breath,
Yes.
when we breathe, actually scientifically we take in air which is composed of oxygen. But if we look at it from the subtle point of view, oxygen and air are vehicles of something still deeper. And we can draw that through breath. So breath is of different kind. There is a sigh of relief. There is a breath of sorrow over terrestrial things. There is a breath of joy.
Yes.
And breath changes according to the state of consciousness. There is a subtle link between the breath. And in transformation, the mother speaks of this poem of Sri Aurobindo, this line which the disciple quotes, and the breath became a subtle rhythmic stream. And the mother remarks, oh yes, the breath, the breath, the breath. Because
And I think we should remember that Mother said that none of us can but help to breathe the supramental
yes,
air
and
who live here.
she
And in other
two
areas.
things. One is, he said, today the terrestrial atmosphere, by the very fact you live and breathe
Yes,
upon this earth, you are breathing the new consciousness. She has used the word breathing.
Breathing.
She has another place said that if you live in the world, that is earlier, you breathe the poison. You just can't help it. You go to a marketplace and you breathe poison. That's why she was so keen that we should not keep mixing, meddling here and there and everywhere, all the marriage parties and this and that, because it's not healthy. You breathe that atmosphere. Even cinema hall. There was a time when children wanted to see cinema, and when she heard that they are going, children means all grown-up sadhaks. So she had, she said, okay, they want to see cinema, so she purchased the entire hall's tickets for these few sadhaks because he didn't want them to mingle. Then she started a cinema here. But now she has changed the very atmosphere. So that's now. But those days when there was so much crudity and, human beings of all kind, so she went to this extent to safeguard the children from breathing that air. And then even air of discontent. But about Pondicherry, she has said, you cannot live here without breathing my air. And she says it's even the most material level, it's because her subtle atmosphere extends right up to the very lake. And some people, when you speak of this, who are not accustomed, they may think, oh, one of those stories which people make to spread their, but actually you can feel it so palpable. I've felt it several times, and I'm sure number of people, you go out of beyond a certain limit, and you feel, oh my God, you can contact her inside, mentally, other places, but physically you feel something amiss. Absolutely. Then you get used to that new place. Then again you come, it's a tangible joy. I remember the moment you start from Chennai, lake is much later, the joy starts. And the joy is not of just homecoming, because I have lived outside most of my life and I have come back to home, and it's not that. It's something very different. It's a different kind of an experience. So there is something like a whole atmosphere which pervades here is very different. And a lot of people feel it, but they don't know its reason. They just say, it gives so much joy and we like it. And now Shubindu gives through a number of lines this example. The first fair life that breaks from nature's zone, mounts in a line of rapture to the skies, absorbed in its own happy urge it lives, sufficient to itself, yet turned to all. He's describing the mother's nature, which is taking all things and gives to all freely.
Yes.
And this he has described beautifully in that, be like a flower. And I think that is a wonderful standard yardstick. Be like a flower, generous, open, gives itself freely to all, equal, frank. It doesn't conceal anything, whatever it is. It doesn't say, I'll give my beauty only to this, not to that. And then she says, happy is he who can exchange his qualities, human qualities, with those of a flower. So nature is like that. You see anything in nature, even the poets there's a poem in Hindi where he says, Nadiya na piye kabhi apna jal. The beauty of river, it doesn't drink its own water. Ped na vriksha na chakhe kabhi apna phal. The tree does not want to taste its own fruit. Of course, it's not about scientifically impossibility. But the point is that we should be like that everything in us belongs to all. And to receive also with equal wideness, not with shrinking, oh no, that's also another kind of veil of ego. Some people, are very hesitant, and then they start calculating, I have taken this, I have to give that, or I have given this, I will get this. But to receive all and to give all freely. So he is describing that whenever there is a new creation, it has no sane communion with its world, no open converse with surrounding things. And yet there is something else. There is a oneness, native and occult, that needs no instruments and erects no form. In unison it grows with all that is. So it's not that she was a social person going and receiving everything and giving, no. But occultly, inwardly, inly, she is one with the spirit of all things. And there are so many experiences of her right from childhood onwards. So it's not that outwardly one has to, often people ask this. You don't have to socialize outwardly. But if you are living a true consciousness or even trying to live one, you'll radiate it wherever you are. Even you are walking on a road, it will radiate. It's not like you have to do some special activity. It will go wherever you go, because that's how that is. That's what probably Kabir meant when he said, "Wherever I put my feet, that place is a holy place, Tirath." Or whatever I speak is a Veda. Because I am speaking truth. Veda is about truth, true knowledge. So that should be our state. And that's how she is born, with this native oneness. All contacts it assumes into its trance, laugh tossed, consents to the wind's kiss and takes transmutingly the shocks of sun and breeze. A blissful yearning writes in its leaves, a magic passion trembles in its blooms, its boughs aspire in hushed felicity. See these plants and trees, I tell you this, amazing, and of course it's a little selfish thing, but if you speak to them before entering the house, if you have a tree or plant, they take your worries, very sensitive. Even some animals take it very unconsciously, they will take it. But plants also take it very, very unknowingly. You sit, talk to a plant or a tree. I mean, as I said, selfish shouldn't happen. You should actually give them joy and beauty and light. But they just absorb. When you come out in the morning tomorrow, they have transmuted it and giving you once again that joy. And I have actually seen it and even advised some people that, are carrying a lot of worries. I said, hang them on pegs outside if you want to. Best is to turn them toward the divine, but not everybody is fortunate to have a trust in the divine like a child. So hang it, go into the house, and you see that it dissolves. It's its nature because of the oneness. It lives in that oneness, it diffuses into the spirit of the species. That's what he is going to reveal to us, and how it aspires towards the secret light. In the evenings, Mother speaks of this experience, where how these plants and the cherry blossom identifying with it. And she says, if you look in the evening, how the plant, as if it is climbing up in a prayer towards the lost light. And that's why it's a very beautiful time for meditation. Early morning, it is celebrating the return of light. And in the evening, it is aspiring for the return of light.
The great botanist George Washington Carver knew every plant, every insect, every tree, everything. And they said, how do you know it all? And he says, anything will give up its secrets if you love it enough.
Beautiful. Absolutely true. So few more lines, then we can stop. This passage we'll finish, which is dealing with this. An occult Godhead of this beauty is cause, the spirit and intimate guest of all this charm, this sweetnesses priestess, and this reveries muse. So plants have their own Godhead, the spirit of the species. And this species draws its strength from the Lord of beauty. That's where it reaches.
Mother even calls it the genius of
genius
the
of
species.
it. That's right. The word she has used is genius of a species. And now she is using the term which is normally used in occult parlance. Invisibly protected from our sense, the dryad lives drenched in a deeper ray. So the dryad are those beings who are found in trees and forest, and they are actually they preside over, people often say trees and river bodies, they contain these beings, and they are spirit of the species. So spirit of a certain tree or spirit of a certain group of trees. Some trees have their individual guardian, and some trees live in groups like
Fir trees.
Fir trees, and even that from which you have the eucalyptus soil, tall ones.
Yeah, the eucalyptus trees.
So when some of the trees fell down, there was one lonely one standing. Mother said, this too will go.
Yes.
Because it likes to be in the group. It doesn't like to be alone.
It was in the ashram.
In the
It was in the ashram courtyard.
Yes.
And Mother said, because it's alone now, you have to take it out.
Whereas there are others which like to be alone. The rose. It doesn't like when you mix it with other flowers. Very proud. What is it, elite? You are mixing me with...
With daisies.
So, invisibly protected from our sense, the dryad lives drenched in a deeper ray, and feels another air of storms and calms, and quivers inwardly with mystic rain. This, at a heavenlier height, was shown in her. So, inwardly, she was one with all beings, all creatures. Her spirit opened freely to all, and she drew that greater consciousness and lived drenched in it, even while others were having a very human outward experience. So, we'll stop here, and tomorrow
We meet tomorrow.